Hi, I'm Jere White from White Forest Nursery. We're here today to talk about lawns. Yeah, that evil creature, the lawn, but it does so much for you. So we're going to talk a lot about what to do with lawns and why it's important and that type of thing. And so I want to tell you a lot about how to keep that lawn healthy, how to keep it growing with very little water, very little resources, and keep it nice and green. So let's get started. So lawn's kind of interesting because in lawns, it's the largest population of plants that you have in your yard. Think about it. There's thousands and thousands of plants that make up a lawn. And the problem with lawns is that you got all these plants and you got a monoculture, meaning you've got one variety in there, and you've got these bugs, you got these creatures who want to do it because you got a big expanse of area that they want to eat. So how do we keep it healthy? How do we keep it growing? And more importantly, why do we want a lawn at all? That's the first question. Well, what we know is lawns really provide more cleaning to the air than anything else you can do in the yard. University of Riverside studies have shown that there's actually more purification of air, more cleaning of the air, and more cooling of the environment than anything else that you do. That's number one. Number two is that heat in the summer. You know, we're talking about cooling. We know we can drop the temperature of the outside environment if you have a nice lawn by at least 5 to 7 degrees. Think about it. Wasn't it hot this last summer? Think what you can do there. Plus, it's a place for the kids and the pets to play, soft, and it really does add a different aspect about your lawn. So we're going to talk about that today. And so here's a couple handouts that you may want to go through. And we're going to talk about the problems and the difficulties that you might have in lawns. So when I've gone through lawns, I've gone through thousands of different yards, and lawns can be a terrible thing because one patch here is tough and another patch over here, and trying to get the water and keeping the sprinklers all going and that type of thing can be an issue. So the first thing I want to talk about is the compaction issue. Most of the time you walk across the lawn, it's kind of like walking on concrete. You know, you've seen that, you jump on it, and ouch! And more than that is when you put water on it, you know, it goes down about this far. And I've done probings on a whole lot of lawns, and the average lawn root depth is about 1 to maybe 3 inches. I get pretty excited, it's 3 inches. But the deal is, so that means you have to water real frequently to keep it dry. You know, in warm climates like this, when you got a day that's close to 100, it's drying out within a few hours. So you're having to water multiple times a day to keep that thing green. That costs a lot of money, time, and that type of thing. So the first thing we want to do is to get those roots down deeper to make your life so much easier. Now, there is a product on the market. It's called Groundbreaker. Groundbreaker can actually loosen the soil up overnight. And to demonstrate that, let me show you how. We got some really good demonstration on that. So, got this nice little bucket here, and we've got this little apparatus. So this is kind of just a dish to kind of hold water. And we got this fabric membrane that's very much like soil. So what we know is that if it happens to rain, does that once in a while, or you turn the irrigation on, you put water on, and what happens with that water? It's still sitting there. Or it's running down the gutter, you know, causing you a whole lot of problems. So when the water can't penetrate, those means those roots aren't penetrating either, and you're having to water frequently just to get that top inch or 2 inches of roots going. But with the Groundbreaker, it's kind of nice because you can spray that on, and we're just going to put a few drops in here and see what it does.
Wow.
It works that fast.
It's like a shower.
It's like a shower. That's exactly right. It goes right on down. And it's what it does to your soil overnight. Ultimately, it opened up the spores of soil down to 6 feet deep. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a little longer, but it does make a big difference. So if you got compaction issues, you have runoff issues, which is typical with a lot of lawns. Sometimes we have lawns that are sloped. You put it on here, down bottom is green and top's green. The sides just kind of browning out just because you can't get water to stay there. The Groundbreaker will solve that. Very easy to apply. You wet the grass, spray this on, wet it down, tomorrow it drains. It's that easy. And so we can do that, and we can utilize our water resources much, much more efficiently. So that's the first thing we need to do. Get that going. The second thing is we want to get those roots to follow that nice moisture that we just got down. If we could get roots deeper than 1 to 3 inches, then then we can be able to utilize those resources, be able to grab that water that's down deeper. We can be able to grab that food, all of the nutrition that it needs, and bring it to that plant. So one way to do that is use a product called Turf Max. Turf Max actually will do what this poster shows within a couple weeks. So Turf Max has many, many different ingredients in it. And we know that soil is kind of like a puzzle. You know, there's many, many different pieces to make that whole picture. If you happen to be missing a little zinc here, a little copper here, maybe nitrogen's missing here, things don't grow properly. And if we can provide all those pieces of the puzzle together, then we complete that picture and you'll get great root development. So Turf Max is really a fixer. It's guaranteed to fix the lawn. It's going to make that much difference. Now, if you happen to use a cool season grass like a tall fescue or a bluegrass or something like that, you may have to seed there because those grasses don't repair if you have a bare spot. But simply put the seed down, put the Turf Max over the top, and you're going to have a nice, full, thick lawn. But more than that, what it's doing is going to be nice and green, but you're going to get roots down deep. What you should see is roots down 12 to 15 inches in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. My lawn, where the Turf Max has been on a little bit longer, my roots are down 36 inches. What that meant is even in the middle of summer, when it was 115 degrees, we had to water twice a week, and it's beautiful green. Yes?
What kind of grass do you have again?
So I have a hybrid Bermuda in the front, and I've got St. Augustine in the back.
Doesn't Bermuda grass normally have long roots?
Yes, but usually, I have checked a good portion of them. They're not penetrating because it's compacted. We've got nutrition problems. So it can have long roots, obviously, but in most cases, literally, I've looked at thousands. I have never seen a deep long root and something hasn't been treated. So if we can do that, then we know we're going to use at least 40% less water. That's what UC Riverside told us. In most cases, we'll see using 50 to 60% less water just because it's able to grab that water that we're wasting otherwise. Not running into the curb, number one. It's not going past those roots, number two. The other benefit is that we don't have to feed as often because we got root systems grabbing that nutrition that's already there that the roots can't normally get to. So we're making a big difference there. So the system to make a great lawn is to go through and get the compaction done, get the drainage going with the ground breaker, fix the lawn with Turf Max, and then we're done forever, right? Probably not. There's always a catch, isn't there? So we want to maintain those benefits. And so we can do that by using and feeding with like ammonium sulfate. Has anybody used ammonium sulfate? Pretty great. We like to think of it kind of as the heroin for the grass. You just put a little on, the grass reacts. Next time you put a little bit more on. And if you put too much on, by the way, it turns brown and dies. So kind of like that. But the thing is that for decades we have used the commercial fertilizers. And so whether it may not be ammonium sulfate, but it could be urea, which is even higher nitrogen, 4-6%. And a lot of times we'll go to a 16 or some cases we'll use like a Turf Royale, which is a nitrate base. And these fertilizers get results. They turn green. The problem is they are salts. I don't know if you remember Roman history, but back when the Romans went through and they conquered lands, they'd go through after they conquered it and salt the fields. Why'd they do that? Prevent plants from growing so that nation could not feed itself. They were totally reliant on the Romans for food, and so there was never any uprisings because they couldn't eat if they threw the Romans out because their property had been salted. Well, similar thing happens with the fertilizer. It's not quite that, but every time you put it on, it's killing a little bit of the microbiology, little by little. And over a period of years, then that microbiology pretty much disappears. And yes, we can have a green lawn in that, but it's not growing healthy. And if there's any bit of problem, the fungus comes in or drought comes in, the thing just kind of collapses. We want something that's sustainable. We want something that's nice and beautiful, that's soft to walk on, that can give you that air and cleaning ability and the oxygen and all that type of thing. So we do eventually have to feed it. And what I recommend doing is using an organic fertilizer for a couple reasons. First off, it's safe for you, your pets, the environment, and that type of thing. But with the organic fertilizers, like this Dr. Earth, there's Gardner and Bloom, there's actually, what's kind of interesting is there's actually not one thing in this bag that the lawn can use. Not one. You put this on, there's nothing that the lawn can use. What you're doing is feeding the microbes, you're feeding the soil, you're feeding the environment. When those grow, then they actually break down and feed the plant. So it's kind of indirect feeding, but it's very healthy because you create a very sustainable environment so that's nice and green, lush for long periods to come. Now, what you can do is use a different product, and that's called Pro-Gro 365. What we know is by doing surveys, but the national average of people feeding in the United States is 1.2 times per year. So think about it. If you were eating your feet one time a year, well, how would you be feeling right about now? Well, your plants are kind of the same way. You know, we don't die after 24 hours or 5 days like we do, but they suffer. And it's not like they die instantly, but they get weak. And then now you're inviting in the weeds and the insects and diseases. So by using something like Pro-Gro 365, this will feed for 365 days a year. One time a year is all you have to use this. It also has the BioLife complex in it, which is the microbiology we're talking about. Get it back installed, and it actually gives you a very nice continuous release for one full year. Very easy to do, very healthy. We're not creating just hay as it grows, real tall growth, and then nothing like ammonium sulfate urea does. Creating nice, even, sustained, healthy growth that you don't have to do much for. What's really interesting is that once you get that grass healthy, there's a lot less work. You know, you got weeds in your lawn. You ever seen any come in? That's fun, right? So it's nice because dandelions, you get spurge in your lawn, maybe. Lots of spurge. Well, the thing is, if we look closely what the weeds are, we can tell what the lawn's doing. So usually when there's lots of spurge, that means the ground is compacted. Spurge grows wonderfully in soils where it doesn't drain very well, where the water stays on top of the surface and where those roots can't get down. If we change those conditions, then you'll reduce. I'm not saying eliminate completely, but you're going to greatly reduce that spurge and those weed problems. Back about 4 or 5, 6 years ago, there was a golf course at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and they had a fairway there that it was kind of bad because it was so thin that the ball was sitting on the soil. Do you know what that does to the golf scores those generals who are playing that course? You know, we can't have that. So they actually put some turf mats down. I actually got to see it a couple weeks after it was put down, and sure enough, that area where the turf max was nice and thick and dense, and of course where it wasn't is like it was. What was more interesting to me, though, is the area where they put the turf max on, there were weeds. There was one right here, and then there was another one over here, maybe another one back here, and the area where it was not been applied, it was almost solid weeds. So it's not the turf max necessarily killing the weeds, it's making that grass thicker and more dense so that the weeds can have a good place to grow. Weeds are opportunistic. They like open, broken ground. They like areas where it's not ideal, where they don't have that competition. So you can save yourself a lot of time, a lot of money there. Anybody doing any overseeding? Yeah, what kind of grass do you have?
Bermuda.
Hybrid Bermuda. Are you going to overseed this year? Put some.
Yes.
You are.
I'm going to put winter grass.
Very good. We'll talk about that then. What grasses you have? Bermuda mostly, or
it was a Bermuda as well.
Bermuda. Okay. Well, Bermuda is very common in warm season climates. As we go into areas in Colorado and Utah and all those that do more of a bluegrass, but it doesn't really matter. What we want to do, and the advantage over seeding, is that first off, it looks great. That's why most people do it. But when we put this overseed in, we've got something growing in that environment, we reduce the weed count. Because you're keeping it thick, you don't have the opportunity for that weed to sprout and get down and get in that soil. One thing we really don't want to do is scalp that dormant grass and not replant, because now we're just opening that soil up, and oh my goodness, the weeds just are sprouting everywhere. So you don't want to scalp a non-seeded grass this time of year. You can scalp it down just as the Bermuda starts taking off in March, maybe 1st of April. But if you are overseeding, you want to go through, and here's the procedure. You go through and cut the grass down close, you get it. You only reason is that you want to get that seed in contact with the soil. If it's sitting on top of the grass, it'll germinate a lot of times, but it sprouts and then there's no place for the root to go and it just dies. So you end up killing the seed. So you're going to mow it down as close as you can get it, put out the seed. I'd like to take a reed leaf rake. Sometimes I'll drag a piece of chain link fence and just kind of drag a little bit. It kind of just wiggles that grass and gets in contact with the soil. You'll increase your germination 10-15% by doing that, by the way. And then I really do like covering. A lot of people don't cover it, in which case you water about 3 times a day for 2 or 3 minutes until that thing's germinating and growing. And then you can start cutting it down to once a day and then every couple days and that type of thing. And basically, in this climate, in Bakersfield, you really don't have to water maybe once a week every 10 days or so in the middle of the winter. Not saying zero just because the water, the rain is not consistent enough. You got to have a little moisture down there, but very little. So I have a lot of people in the last 3 or 4 years talking about, gee, I don't want to overseed because I'm wasting water. Okay, there's about a week, 10 days that you're taking a little bit more water than you would, but most of the rest of the time you are not. Because we know, we've done tests, and you don't absolutely have to water in the winter at all. But again, I'd like to see about every 10 days of light watering just to make sure that we have some moisture down where it should be. Now, if we get an inch of rain, we probably don't have to. That generally doesn't happen too often. So, if you cover the seed after you've done this process, you'll increase the germination also. You know, people use steer manure, and that's okay. That's better than nothing. If indeed you're wanting to rehab your lawn and get it in good shape for years to come, then a lot of times we'll cover it with the Turf Max, just a 1/4 inch on top. It's going to do a couple things. First off, it's going to increase the germination of that seed you're putting down because we've got some mulch and we're holding the moisture in there. We're providing food, nutrition for it to grow. But secondly, we're going to be actually changing that soil down deeper so when those roots do start growing, they'll go down deep and able to get the nutrition and the bounce they need. But more than that is when that ryegrass does go dormant or dies in the middle of summer when it gets hot, now your Bermuda's growing so much better too because now they've got the good soil that it was looking for. And so the protocol, generally, the best protocol is scatter the seed out, scratch it, top it with Turf Max, keep it wet, water 3 times a day for 2 or 3 minutes, just keep that top moist until it germinates, until it starts sprouting, and then you start knocking that water down little by little each week, so you virtually have no water. After 6 months, then you come back with a Pro-Gro 365 once a year, and you're done. That is your lawn care.
What's the coverage?
50 square feet. So, you know, you're going to use several bags one time. So you got some expense to begin with, but really there's payback because you're going to use much less water and much less fertilizer and all that kind of and it's going to be green. A lot of people just put this in problem areas where every lawn they've ever looked at is a problem area somewhere. Put it in the problem area. You know, go with the rest. Yes.
Do the commercial top dressing products, they don't have what this product has in it?
No. So this is the only product in the market that really has all those pieces of the puzzle. It has the biology in it. It's got the trace elements, the macro and micronutrients. It's got food to keep the biology alive. It was funny, I was at the National Golf Show, I don't know, it's been 5-6 years ago, and there was over 75 different biological products that they were trying to sell right there. And every one of them asked that you put it on every 2 to 3 weeks. That's because you spray the biology on, but if the soil isn't in good condition for the biology to grow, it dies. So this concept is get the soil in great shape, put the biology in, and keep it for virtually forever. With exception, maybe you got a gate you're tromping on or something like that. You've got a dog walking around, packing that thing down. And you may have to treat in a small area, 2, 3, 4 years down the road just because we kind of abuse that soil a little bit. But other than that, it could be maintained for a long, long period of time just by going once a year to the Pro-Gro 365. Keep it nice and clean. Anybody got any weeds right now? No weed problems?
I'm sure I do.
I'll go through that.
I don't want to focus on that.
So if you do, we're going to go real short through this one there so you'll know what's available. So when you have weeds in a lawn, that indicates generally there's a problem, number one, so we need to pay attention to that problem. We ran out of food, compacted, and whatever. But we need to get rid of them ultimately because if we let the weeds take over, Sometimes, if that lawn's growing weak, it can outcompete it, and eventually all you end up is weeds. And if you mow it and it's green, sometimes that's okay. But you can end up with some kinds of weeds that really become a pain in your foot. For example, there's a weed that came into this area about 5 or 6 years ago called Kylina. Kylina is a sedge, and it puts on a burr. And it's very thin-bladed, gets about this tall, so about 3 to 5 inches tall. And when you walk on it, it stings. I mean, it really hurts. You can't walk across your yard. And there was nothing here 10 years ago, and it's pretty much most every yard I've ever seen has a little here and there. You don't want to let that one go. That one's a real problem. You ever had nutgrass problems?
Not too much.
Good for you. I happen to have a nutgrass problem because that's what my neighbor's lawn is. It's nutgrass. It's all it is. Trust me, it's all it is. So the neat thing is there is a killer for both of those that you can use. If you have the Kylina, which is a sedge, and the nutgrass, which is sedge. This was fairly new to the market 2 or 3 years ago. Before that was Sedge Hammer and a bunch of others, and they work okay. This is better for a couple, 3 reasons. First off, it's cheaper. Secondly, it's easy to use. You simply hook it up to the hose, spray what you need to spray, turn it off and put it back on the shelf. There's no mixing involved, and there's no lifetime for that stuff that you already mixed like those others were. But more important, it's more effective. It actually does a better job. It will kill pretty much all the stuff that you have up. What you have left, however, is seeds and in the case of nutgrass, nutlets, and those are sprouts. So you'll have to spray another time or two, but it really does an excellent job. And so there is hope for those of us who have to move otherwise to get rid of it. The other second one is broadleaf weeds. So any weed that has a roundish leaf, like the spurge, like the dandelions and that type of thing, you can use a couple different killers on it. This is actually Weed Whacker. This covers about 20,000 square feet. So real inexpensive way to do it. This is also a hose-in applicator, though they have others you can put in your own sprayer. And spray across the top. It doesn't hurt your lawn. It will kill those broadleaf weeds. Don't spray it on your trees and shrubs because it'll probably do a really good job on that too. But good for lawn. If we get in the middle of the winter time, or if you have some weeds that are really difficult to kill, Speed Zone is a little bit newer product. It works well when the weather is cooler. It also kills a little bit weeds that are tougher to kill. This one, it needs to be probably 75, 80 degrees to be effective. This one, actually I get pretty good kill at 40, 45 still. So in the winter you can kill things out very, very effectively. So those are the weed killers that cover most of it. You can do an excellent job. But really what I'm saying is the key is get that lawn healthy, get it thick, and you tend to eliminate a good portion of those weed problems without doing a whole lot more work. So this is one you can really take and apply and sit back and relax and enjoy the results of that test. So.
My lawn was put on top of fabric.
Yes!
Is that an issue? Is that a problem? I mean, I was surprised one time last summer the whole yard was bulging up. And there was a water leak underneath it, and I had no idea it was under fabric.
So is it the woven fabric,
yes.
The tight fabric?
Yes.
Yes, that's a problem because it'll never get beyond that fabric. It's a weed mat fabric and it's designed to prevent roots from coming through there. It prevents weeds from coming up, but you never get any rooting on that. So how deep is that fabric?
It's about 2 inches.
What you can do, and I highly recommend it, you can rent a core aerator. And that's a machine that takes plugs out, yes, and perforate the heck out of that thing. I mean, really go through and core aerate. That fabric is bad for your lawn because you are always forever going to be watering it once or twice a day just to keep the thing green. Because there's no place for the roots to go. It's just you got a nice mat of weeds, but I'm sure where you saw the bubbling up, probably the other areas, I'll bet you could just take and roll that thing up and you'll be able to do that 5 years from now. It won't ever root down. So sometimes they'll use a mesh, like a netting to keep the turf together when they put the sod on.
No, that's not that.
But that was... Somebody didn't know what they're doing. That was bad. We'll do
be
that
on
in the flower.
Be on a hill. I think they didn't want, the thing to lower, the ground to lower. up on a hill. So
It's really bad because it's doing the opposite. Because when you don't have that mat in there, the roots can go down deep and actually hold the soil and act as a erosion control. But with the mat there, basically you just have the lawns on the mat.
Yeah.
So it's constantly running out of food, it's running out of water. Do the core aeration. Because if you can, if they're only 2 inches, you can break that netting in 10,000 places.
Right.
Then the roots will go down, and I think you'll solve a good portion of the problems. Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Another thing I was thinking about is if it's 2 inches,
Yes.
the roots are right there. And which part of the soil dries out faster or before? It's the top,
This is the top 2 inches.
and that's where the roots are, and they would dry out. So
Exactly.
Weak looking dry.
Absolutely. So yeah, weed mat is a bad deal.
Yeah, the
That
roots
was-
need to penetrate down.
They can't penetrate, and they never will. They never will. So
That's a good idea. Get an aerator in.
yeah, I think that'll solve it. If they're 2 inches shallow, most often the aerator will go 2.5 to 3 inches, so you'll
Right.
be able to perforate it and solve that. And gee, it doesn't take much effort on you. You can have that done in
yeah, it's not that big.
no, it's not that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean you can have it done in 30 minutes and solve your problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, be a good deal. All right. Any other questions on keeping a lawn green and what we need to do? And we know we can overseed. Oh, we already talked about overseeding. So you both have Bermuda lawns, and so you can choose to overseed. Most often, we'll overseed with a ryegrass. Fairly inexpensive. It's a lawn that looks very nice in the wintertime, and it most often dies out in the summer. So you can use annual ryegrass, which is what we used to use exclusively 10, 20 years ago. A little bit whiter bladed, a little lighter green, but the advantage is it tends to die out sooner as the hot weather comes. Good portion of the gardeners and landscape traders started using perennial ryegrass, which perennial means it lasts from year to year. Well, the reason they do, it is finer and darker green. It's a little easier, it cuts a little nicer, doesn't tend to shred. And if you have shade, it will persist in the shade, but if it's in the sun, the heat will still knock it out, though it takes longer for that to happen. Now, if you end up with a perennial ryegrass and you need to get rid of it, it's very easy to kill it. When the temperature gets over about 90 degrees, you turn the water off that lawn for about 2 or 3 days, you cut that lawn really nice and tight, and then the perennial rye dies. Then you can turn the water back on, the Bermuda grass goes poof and green, and so you got about a week there. It's kind of ugly, but you can get rid of that, and that keeps that transition going so that you have nice Bermuda after. So very easy to take care of that one.
I've been using the most inexpensive winter grass from Floyd's.
Yes.
And I've been very lucky with it.
Yes.
I mean, that stuff grows no matter what.
There you go.
You know?
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Yep. You can use that. I don't know if you're getting annual perennial exactly, but
I don't know. It's there's no
doesn't
say anything
well,
on it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
most
Ask them.
inexpensive.
It really doesn't make any difference, but it'd be interesting to know which
Yeah,
one's good.
yeah.
But no.
I see the annual one is more expensive. That one is the most inexpensive.
Okay. Probably the annual. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But it works well. It works well. But I sure would take that effort and punch that seed out of there. That's not so much for the winter because you obviously going to look nice when you put the ryegrass in there. But
Right,
it's,
right.
it's in the
Right.
summertime where you're going to be seeing the difference.
Yeah.
Get that thing fixed. All right. Any other questions? All right.
So before putting this stuff on,
Yes.
I have to treat the weeds. I
No,
should
not
treat the weeds.
necessarily.
Okay.
You can mow it down low. I mean, it's going to make so this makes everything grow. So if you
Okay.
have weeds there, they're going to grow too. By the way,
Yeah.
we don't discriminate.
I think I had the weed problem for a while. I had a sprinkler problem, so
Yes.
I had to turn the sprinklers off at certain places,
Right.
and that's where the weed came in. I think now the sprinklers are fixed.
Starting to
Maybe.
fill in and looking
Yeah,
at it.
yeah. It might be not an issue.
Yep. Yep. Sprinklers are an issue. I mean, they're never perfect, ever. So you always got to keep tweaking them. You need to look at them like once a month.
Yeah.
Turn it on, see what they're covering. They get a little grain of sand in.
And run over it with a lawnmower. And
No, that's right. All right. I'm Jere White for White Forest Nursery. This has been the Lawn Seminar. Come back and check us again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Turn this on.